Hey everybody, welcome to the weekly news recap for the 28th of July to the 3rd of August 2025. So we'll get into it. So the main story continues to be the continuing censorship from payment processes over on Steam and itch.io. So we're seeing kind of the backlash from that now as kind of gamer community members are starting to call up Mastercard and Visa and basically clog their helplines and things like that. And it sounds like Mastercard and Visa are getting a little pissed off about it. Anyway, so there's a growing backlash to Steam and itch.io, purging thousands of games from their databases at the behest of payment processing companies. This was, as we talked about last time, Collective Shout, who are connected to Exodus Cry, the Heritage Foundation, a bunch of other like right-wing US-backed things, even though Collective Shout is itself Australian. But there are similar groups that pretend to be all for the kids, but they're really all for taking away civil rights. Anyway, there's now a mounting reverse campaign in the hopes of nudging Visa and MasterCard in the opposite direction. This is being led by a bunch of other video game people and just regular people who are kind of sick of the whole thing. Anyway, so this is from one person leading it. Seeing the rise of censorship and claiming it's to protect kids, it sounds almost like the Satanic Panic, which I think I talked about last week. Anyway, the Satanic Panic was people playing Dungeons and Dragons and, you know, summoning demons and that kind of thing. And that turned out to be a bunch of bullshit. Anyway, targeting people that have done nothing to anyone except having fun. We're already seeing the negative effect this has on people's personal and financial lives because of such unnecessary restrictions. They can't sell their games, they can't make money. If parents are so concerned over protecting kids, then they should parent their own kids instead of forcing other people to meet their ridiculous demands. And of course, that has always been the case of when somebody think of the children, it's just, they do. They're called parents. Parents should be doing it. This is not the role of the government to raise your children for you. Anyway, one game that was shown as a kind of example of something being caught in the crossfire, unintended consequence, though I would argue it's an intended consequence. They just don't want to say that. Anyway, indie horror game Vile Exhumed as one of the titles that's been banned. So the way the game works is players rummage through a fictional 90s computer terminal to uncover a twisted man's toxic obsession with an adult horror film actress. So you've probably seen a couple of those kind of games present you with like a fake 90s PC, and you can scrub through like the recycle bin and the file directory and open through emails and stuff like that, and eventually you get a picture of what's going on. And in this case, it had things to do with adult horror film. The game itself kind of engaged with themes of online misogyny and toxic parasocial relationships. It was very much an intent of showing these things as bad things. Anyway, it was banned for sexual content with depictions of real people, which, if you have played it, you know is all implied, making this all feel even worse. There's no actual sexual content in the game. It's all just implied things. This is coming from Kara Cadaver. Sounds like a pseudonym. Anyway, the developer of the game. Anyway, Valve did not comment. Vile Exhumed, I believe, is still down as of now. Anyway, guidelines aimed at clamping down on pornographic games. This game is obviously not pornographic, even though it might allude to those kind of things. That's not the same thing. Inevitably, this will ensnare serious works of art grappling with difficult and uncomfortable subject matter. Again, I would argue that's the point. They're just using the porn side of it to make it easy, palatable for people to go, oh yeah, kids shouldn't be looking at porn. Obviously, we should block that. But they, who decides what pornography is? It was rather famously in, I think it was Hustler versus, I don't think it was the US government, I think it was the state government, but it basically came down to them not being able to give a legal definition of what pornography was. Because things like erotica would have been caught up in their definitions, things like nude statues, like the classic Greek kind of stuff, would also have been caught up in that kind of thing, breastfeeding, instructions would have been got them and that kind of thing. So they had no way of like definitively saying what is and isn't pornography. It was more of a I know it when I see it kind of thing, but that's doesn't stand up in legal at the time, at least. And this is kind of the same thing. It's like, who gets to decide what qualifies as obscene material? You know, some people would think that anything talking about LGBT issues is considered obscene. Talking about breastfeeding is considered obscene. Talking about, you know, suicide prevention is considered obscene. Things like that. You know, it's who gets to decide these things. And well, right now, Visa and Mastercard apparently are the people who are deciding it. And whoever can frighten them the most with bad publicity. It's just what we heard from Collective Shout, that they had named individual members of the board and of the executive level at Mastercard and Visa, saying that, are you okay with Steam making money off rape, incest, etc. things? And Steam does not do those things. It takes down those things. Anyway, this is from another person in the community. Things are definitely changing. Responses to calls have gone from "sorry, what are you talking about?" to then "are you also calling about itch or Steam?" to now some callers receiving just outright harassment. It does seem that Mastercard and Visa have come out as combative with people calling about these kind of things. So like cutting them off early, putting them on hold for a million years, or putting them on, or saying they're going to put them on hold and then just hanging up on them, things like that. Anecdotally, the effort seems to be gaining traction. Again, we don't really know, but hopefully something is changing. Anyway, this coming from Blue Sky user who had this open letter. Anyway, 2 days ago I had a call with Visa that lasted over an hour, and a follow-up call later on that lasted over 2.5 hours. Those calls, I spoke with the supervisor and they seemed very calm and understanding. Yesterday, the calls were different. The rep seemed angry and exhausted. They refused to let me speak to a supervisor and kept insisting that it is now protocol for them to disconnect the call on anyone complaining about this issue. Calls were juggled between various managers until one earlier this week led to a 30-minute exchange with the manager reading from a script. Subsequent calls have led to getting quickly disconnected, so it does seem like these additional calls that people are making are effectively clogging the call lines, which means it's preventing Mastercard, Visa getting calls from like business owners and things like that who are like having issues with payments or what have you. They're not being able to be serviced, as it were. So Mastercard and Visa are probably feeling the pain from that too. Good. IMO, good. Anyway, now as soon as I mention anything in regards to the issue of censorship, they immediately tell me to email. Some even hang up on me after pretending they were going to transfer me. Others are going through the ending speech thing where they just say, oh, well, we can't help you any further, so you're just going to have to email, yada, yada, yada. Some take to mocking, saying, oh, are you also here to talk about the porn thing? Anyway, we'll see what comes from that. Elsewhere, we talked about it last week, but the ACLU have put out their own open letter and petition. Feel free to sign that if you like. The International Game Developers Association, which is sort of an umbrella group for games developers, put out their own statement saying that censorship like this is materially harmful to game developers. This issue is not just about adult content, it is about developers' rights, artistic freedom, and the sustainability of diverse creative work in games. Is that coming from an advocate group for the game developers, not for the game publishing group? Like, this is for like individual indies, effectively. Haven't heard a fucking peep from, you know, the likes of Sony, Microsoft, etc. Talking about this kind of thing. They don't seem to give a shit. Okay, moving on. That wasn't the only story talking about this. So Mastercard finally getting enough bad press against this, or trying to wean off the people calling in, denied that they pressured Steam to censor not safe for work games. So they put out a statement. This is here anyway. Valve previously laid blame for a recent purge of adult sex games from Steam at the feet of payment processors and their related card networks at banks, Visa and Mastercard effectively. Mastercard basically saying that they had not evaluated any game or required restrictions of any activity on game creator sites and platforms, contrary to media reports and allegations. Our payment network follows standards based on the rule of law. Put simply, we allow all lawful purchases, no, they fucking don't, on our network. At the same time, we require merchants to have appropriate controls to ensure Mastercard cards cannot be used for unlawful purchases, including illegal adult content. Unlawful purchases needs an asterisk there because they prevent the sale of some things that are lawful. They just don't like them. Anyway, they did have further clarification. I did find this kind of funny. This is the tweet about it. But it was community noted. Both Steam and itch have stated the removal of adult content came from pressure by payment processors. Furthermore, Mastercard have a history of refusing service to Japanese retailers specifically over legal adult content in that country, even though it's not legal in the US. So, kind of a problem there. What specifically the content was, I don't know, but it was legal in Japan and they just refused. They refused to process the payment. Anyway, Valve did come back later to basically say that, lol, no, Mastercard are lying. Anyway, a renewed crackdown on those requirements, which can be vague in practice, has resulted in Valve and itch delisting anywhere from hundreds of thousands of games they worry could get it in trouble with Mastercard. So the idea before the update from Valve was that Valve and itch.io are basically taking the overly cautious route of delisting things that may not necessarily run afoul of Mastercard's rules, but might, and that will get them legal issues. But then Valve came back and basically said that no, Mastercard did fucking tell us to do this. Mastercard, there's a little bit of a technically no they didn't, but really yes they did kind of thing to it. So Mastercard isn't exactly wrong. They didn't evaluate any specific game and didn't tell any specific platform, to list those games. They told somebody else to then tell Valve, basically. Mastercard did not communicate with Valve directly, despite our request to do so. Mastercard communicated with payment processors and their acquiring banks. This would be things like Stripe, PayPal, that kind of thing. Payment processors communicated this with Valve, so they talked to the middleman. Mastercard didn't seem to actually want to talk to Valve and itch. We replied by outlining Steam's policies since 2018 of attempting to distribute games that are legal for distribution. Payment processors now reject this and specifically cited Mastercard's rules 5.12.7 and risks to the Mastercard brand. So they suddenly have a problem. 2018, Valve have been doing this. Now suddenly they have a problem. Mastercard's policies have not changed. They pointed to this rule that has been in place for a while, certainly longer than 2018. So this sure seems arbitrary. Anyway, rule 5.12.7, a lot of it is kind of basic legalese. The beginning, don't do any damage to the corporation here being Mastercard. But then kind of concerningly is the last part of it, which is a bit vague. The sale of a product or service, including an image which is patently offensive and lacks serious artistic value. Who decides that? Mastercard. But who at Mastercard? If they have an agenda, if they've been talking to Collective Shout, Exodus Cry, Heritage Foundation, who knows? Who makes that decision? And they're talking about other things that are more or less illegal, non-consensual sexual exploitation of an minor, mutilation, bestiality, a lot of things that are... Mutilation is an interesting one because so many video games have non-consensual mutilation, fucking decapitating people and so on. They don't have an issue with that. Anyway, well, the last line is probably the more concerning one. Any other material that the corporation deems unacceptable. So there's their get out of jail thing that, oh yeah, we said any other material, so now we've decided this is unacceptable. Violations of Rule 5.12.7 can result in fines, audits, or companies being dropped by the payment processor, which is the real concern for Valve and itch, is that they simply won't be able to sell games anymore. All games, not just the not safe for work games, just the whole platform, which would obviously be a big problem for both of them. So that's why they've acted. They're protecting the company, effectively. But this is obviously a big problem that Valve and Mastercard can dictate to any company that sells things and goes through an online mediary like PayPal, like whoever, or goes directly through a bank, which will still be Visa or Mastercard because very few banks roll their own credit cards. But wait, there's more. Major payment firm behind itch, Adult Game Calls, say they themselves face restrictions from another banking firm. So this was kind of confirmed in some ways that Mastercard and Valve pressured Stripe, PayPal, what have you, to tell the other platforms to stop selling these games. Stripe have now informed the site itch that they themselves are acting under pressure from one of their own banking partners. I wonder who that is. Anyway, so this is talking about how itch.io had to take down their things. They're looking for a new payment partner who is comfortable processing payments for these kind of things, because it's all legal. There shouldn't be an issue, but MasterCard are deciding there is. There has been a return of free, not safe for work projects to the index over on itch. So if the game has a no payment option, you can still find it now on itch. A lot of them do have a pay what you want option, and 0 is an option. The real question then will be, can you still pay what you want? Like, let's say you wanted to pay $10, $15, $20, whatever. Will they still process that payment? I'm guessing no. Right now. But maybe in the future, because they might be able to say they're just giving the $20 to the developer as a tip rather than for specifically the product. That might be a weird legal wiggle room, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, so again from itch, we are still in ongoing discussions with payment processors and will be reintroducing paid content slowly to ensure we can confidently support the widest range of creators in the long term. There has been some kind of miscommunication or misunderstanding on how itch and Valve work, or how Steam and itch.io work more specifically. Steam is very curated. You cannot make a store page on Steam without Valve. Valve have to okay it. Now, you could argue it's probably automated, but they still have to go through the kind of curation process. Itch.io is kind of a, you can make it and then they'll come back later and review it. So itch.io were in a position where they didn't have like a complete picture of what games are actually on the platform in the first place, so they just took them all down. Anything with a not safe for work tag just got taken down. And then they're gonna slowly add them back out, whereas Valve would have had a much bigger picture about what's going on their platform. Remember, itch.io is a very small team, tiny. I think it's a couple of people, and Valve is much bigger than that. Anyway, so Stripe are saying that they can no longer support payments for any content designed for sexual gratification, which is fucking anything. Could be anything. People could get sexual gratification from Tetris. You don't know. Although it does say content designed for sexual gratification. You don't know. The person who created Tetris may have intended it for sexual gratification. I don't know. The point is, it's still really vague. Anyway, Stripe is currently unable to support sexually explicit content due to restrictions placed on them by their banking partners, despite card networks generally supporting adult content. Citation needed on that one. Stripe has indicated that they hope to be able to support adult content in the future, but right now they can't. But wait. There's more. Okay, so this article I thought was kind of interesting from Kotaku. It's kind of in their commentary thing rather than a news section. But they're talking about how VTubers, and more specifically adult VTubers, are kind of coming into the same issue. Obviously, they're very familiar with getting crackdowns from YouTube, Twitch, and what have you, and having payments refused from Visa, Mastercard, PayPal, what have you as well. They're very familiar with it, but there's also a significant crossover between the gaming community, the VTuber community, the loot tuber community kind of thing, adult voiceover, that kind of thing. So having them all kind of come together on the same issue is kind of interesting, but it also means that these kind of VTubers are able to show that this isn't new. Mastercard and Visa aren't new to this censorship game. They have routinely like blocked sex worker stuff, just under principle, even though it's legal anyway. So the fight back against third-party policing of acceptable content on gaming stores, what is and isn't acceptable. VTubers who develop adult content have come into the thing to basically say, here's how we handle it, here's how we're going to do it, or here are ways we can do it. Anyway, so the public backlash against OnlyFans not safe for work ban attempt is that this was very similar. This was also driven by Mastercard and Visa not wanting to process payments going through OnlyFans or similar type of sites. So this is coming from a VTuber or lewd tuber. There's a lot of overlap between all the communities this affects. VTubers rely heavily on game creators, 2D and 3D artists, voice actors, IRL sex workers, and lewd tubers. We commission each other, stream with each other, and need every community in order to exist. Lots of us are in multiples of these communities as well, participating in or hosting the things on both Steam and itch. I've seen people in each of these groups react and give a call to action. So it's a big overlap, basically, of the gaming community and the sex worker community in general on this particular issue, and arguably on a lot of other issues, but certainly this one. Steam and itch.io's policies as part of a larger pattern. You can point to things like Fansly, which is like OnlyFans, terms of service changes, which effectively banned furry content, just in general. Fansly said its guidelines were changed to closely comply with our payment processors, so it wasn't, you can argue, not Fansly's wish to block furry content. It was Mastercard, Visa, whoever. I'm sure there are other payment processors or payment cards, but those are the two big ones who are being singled out. From another VTuber, many creators using furry or furry adjacent avatars have now had to redesign their models for adult content on Fansly, as well as delete all of their previous content using those models or risk being banned. So not only have they lost kind of revenue from all of that content, they have the potential that they might lose that outlet entirely. Skip over some of these images. Anyway, again, this is me skipping over, like, it's, fine. I'm just gonna leave it on screen. There, that's what you get, YouTube. Anyway, I voice for some of the games that have been impacted, and it has put a lot of fear and uncertainty into my career, both as a voice actor and an 18+ creator. The Fansly ban is the same payment processor issue that Steam and itch are facing, and that pressure is impacting every adult creator to reassess what we do, and in some cases completely shift gears on our content. Some people pointing out, like, the Tumblr not safe for work ban was a similar issue, and that just fucking killed Tumblr. Anyway, adult voice actor described Mastercard and Visa as having really strict and vague guidelines, as we've seen. They're very just vague, opaque, that creators have had to manage for years. There's the issue of VTuber censorship on platforms like Twitch and YouTube, which I think we've talked about before, where they've had to change their avatars on the whims of Twitch, and that's not cheap. It's not like you can, put a sweater on on the VTuber or whatever. You gotta draw the fucking thing. Anyway, there's a through line between payment processor restrictions and ongoing censorship against VTubing as a medium. VTubers are often censored and treated as inherently sexual on platforms like Twitch and YouTube, even if they don't make not safe for work content. YouTubers often get flack from both platforms and fellow VTubers. Payment processors are also quite weird about YouTuber content and anime porn in general. There's a lot of weird animosity between YouTubers and IRL cam girls too. Project Melody, for instance, received a lot of negative backlash when she started streaming on Chaturbate and got super popular. Needless to say, it's pretty rough out there. Now, this is more of an indication of gatekeepers shit, which is, if VTubers are making their way into like what would normally be IRL sex worker situations, OnlyFans, Chaturbate, that kind of thing, and you say no, get out, or anime avatars, no, get out. On the one hand, you should be able to curate the community, because like a bunch of Nazis wanted to show up on it, you should be within your rights to say fuck off. But in another way, singling them out like that makes it easier for the platform to ban them. when they're not doing anything wrong and they're, fully within the legal bounds and what have you. Anyway, YouTube and Twitch are notorious for taking punitive action against VTubers. VTubers commonly face warnings of strikes. Warnings were strikes, rather, even though their material follows platform expectations. YouTube's and Twitch's platform expectations are also extremely vague and selectively enforced, we'll say, because a lot of big name YouTubers, big name Twitch streamers get away with breaking those rules. Anyway, Twitch bans often provide little context. Again, when you get a ban, it's just you're banned. We're not going to tell you why, for violating community guidelines. What? Which community guidelines? Anyway, you then, of course, if you're having to deal with a lot of these things, and then you're seeing the Steam itch.io issue as well, you're going to be wondering, will what I make be acceptable in the eyes of the platform? Will the algorithm allow me to say things like unalive and PDF file and so on? Anyway, a point that I'd like to see more in posts is that this affects more than just not safe for work content. Thinking ahead in the future, I'm worried that these companies will pressure us to conform to their ideals. I don't want that, and nor should you. It's a similar situation of blocking gay rights, same-sex marriage, information on mental health issues, any of those kind of things, information on how to get abortions. If they don't like that kind of thing, they're going to tamp down on it. Elsewhere, there's the UK's Online Safety Act that is already blocking subreddits that have those kind of mental health issues or LGBT issues. Just blocked in general because they're adult content. Even though there are, underage LGBT people and underage children are going to suffer mental health problems too. They need this information. Their parents aren't going to do the job, as it turns out. The Online Safety Act wouldn't exist if parents actually did their job. Anyway, payment processor censorship is awful. Remote financial corporations dictating what can and cannot be sold or hosted on independent platforms goes nowhere. Goes nowhere good, rather. But if consumers rise up and fight on behalf of their favorite content creators, be they game developers, YouTubers, something else, then changes just might occur. Maybe. I mean, it didn't actually take much from Collective Shout to get Mastercard and Visa to do this. So the argument is that it shouldn't take as much to get them to undo it as well. We'll see. Right now, I think there's been more effort put into trying to roll this back than there has in putting it out in the first place. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, last thing on this, for this week at least. GOG have come out in support of not safe for work games and against the censorship in general. This is kind of segueing into their game preservation kind of thing, in that getting games taken down off platforms, getting games censored is against game preservation. So for GOG at least, they've offered 13 not safe for work games over on freedomtobuy.games, which is a GOG subdomain. It's only for like 2 days, so by the time you're watching this, it's probably gone already. But to raise awareness of censorship in gaming, there's a campaign. This is part of their campaign for better preservation of DRM-free games. If a game is legal and responsibly made, players should be able to enjoy it, and decades from now. So they're offering up to 13 games for free, including Postal 2, Agony, and House Party, which you may have seen on some streams. It's basically a game that you can just whip your dick out whenever you want. It's really fucking stupid. Anyway, because if a game is legal, you should be free to buy it. Anyway, chances are those games are gone now by the time you're watching this, but still, it's a position for GOG to take. Anyway, we'll take a pause from the shittiness and talk about some showcases that were happening this week. So first up, there was a Nintendo Direct, or a partner showcase for Nintendo Direct. A lot of it was just confirming ports for games that are like PS5, Xbox Series X that wouldn't have run on the Nintendo Switch. A lot of them are being ported over to the Nintendo Switch 2 instead. But there were a couple of new games announced. So first we have The Adventures of Elliot. I know he had a regular name, I couldn't remember. This is a fantastic name for a place though. Philadelphia, definitely not Philadelphia. What the fuck? Anyway, this is a new game from Square Enix, The Adventures of Elliot, something about millenniums. I forget the subtitle. But it's done in the HD 2D style, and it's going for more of an action RPG, real-time RPG kind of thing. So like the old Legend of Zelda games in some ways, and a lot of kind of the older PS1 action RPGs, Alundra, what have you. It looks really good. You know, it looks really nice. Somewhat reminds me of Bravely Default, or Octopath Traveler, or any of the kind of HD 2D games. There is no release date, as far as I'm aware. A lot of the trailers just going over some game mechanics. There is a co-op thing where one of you can play as Elliot and the other can play as the fairy. The fairy has a bunch of different abilities. You saw a couple of them there. The Millennium Tales, that's what it was. So next year, some stage. Not clear if it's exclusive to Switch 2. I'd imagine it is. For now, at least. There is a demo available. I don't own a Switch 2. I haven't had a chance to play it. Feel free if you do. And then the other one, also from Square Enix, which was somewhat surprising, is Octopath Traveler 0. So there's been some, again, misinformation or misunderstandings of what exactly Octopath Traveler 0 is. There is a mobile title, or there was a mobile title of Octopath Traveler, Legends of the Continent, I think it's called, or Heroes of the Continent, or something like that, which was a gacha game. And I think it was Japan only. But anyway, so there's been some understanding that this is effectively the mobile game, but without the gacha mechanics. Square Enix themselves are calling it a sibling game to Heroes of the Continent. So whether that means it's basically Heroes of the Continent but without the gacha stuff, or if it's a completely different thing that is using similar mechanics or something like that. Even though it's called Octopath Traveler, you have way more than 8 characters. Unlike Octopath Traveler 1 and 2, the party makeup is fucking huge. I think at some point you can see how many. I must have skipped. There's a bit where they just show everybody around a crater, and there's like, must be much further back. Hang on, I'm gonna have to scrub through this now. Maybe it's after this. Oh. Maybe it's not even in this trailer. It might have just been in the Switch showcase. I can't find it. Anyway, it's more than 8. December, end of this year. Again, this one's not exclusive, and is also going to be on the original Switch, which might indicate that, yeah, this is probably a port of the mobile game. Anyway, also, still at the Nintendo Direct, a new Katamari game. So Once Upon a Katamari is another game in the Katamari Damacy series. I can't really tell if there's anything new here exactly. There's a co-op option where you and another prince or a cousin can come in and roll up stuff, and you can roll up your friends, but I think that was a thing already in one of the other ones. Big thing made about the music. There's a lot of returning artists and stuff like that. End of October for another Katamari, Once Upon a Katamari. And then the last one is probably only interesting to me. This is Hela. You're playing this kind of mouse familiar who has a frog friend backpack. Your frog friend backpack can do a lot of things, like a grappling hook, and inflate himself so you can glide and stuff like that. The general gist of the game is you are familiar to a witch. The witch has gone ill, and you are gone off on your adventure into the wilderness to find ingredients to make a cure and stuff like that. But kind of more interesting is how it seems like it's kind of just a big playground, maybe. Like I'm not seeing necessarily distinct level geometry, although no, they're co-op partners. So how big the map is, how interactive it is, and so on might be kind of interesting to check out, because it does seem like it is very freeform. Anyway, that's Hela. I don't think it had a release date. No, just next year at some point. but it will be on, by the looks of things, everything. Then THQ had their own showcase, so they showed off a little bit more Gothic, the Gothic remake. If you're not familiar, Gothic was a kind of Elder Scrolls clone from back in the day. There's a demo available for it right now. I found it to be kind of hard. To be honest, I died very quickly. But yeah, it looks like more, like especially with Oblivion Remastered coming out, I think there is maybe an appetite for this kind of game, and a lot of people would have already played Oblivion, so the Oblivion Remastered is kind of more of a nostalgia thing, but I don't think many people played the original Gothic. So there's a small element there of like, hey, here's a new game that plays a bit like the Elder Scrolls. That might be fun, that might be interesting. Fans of Gothic, the Gothic 1, 2, and 3 games are going to be ported over to modern consoles. They're saying it's Gothic Classic rather than like Gothic Remastered or anything like that. So I'm wondering if it is straight up just a port and they haven't done any changes to them. That would be pretty funny. That would be very THQ as well. Anyway, elsewhere, Reanimal. They showed off a little bit more of this. This is from Tarsier Studios, the Little Nightmares 1 and 2 guys, and not Little Nightmares 3. That's owned by a different company, because industry bullshit. But we're not in industry bullshit right now. Anyway, this was shown off at the Game Awards, I think. It's kind of the last time we saw it, so we're getting kind of small snippets of gameplay, but the bigger piece of information is a release window. So it will be beginning of next year. Possibly you're going to see Reanimal. I think Little Nightmares 3 will probably be out before it then. And then Fate Keeper. Fate Keeper was a new game announced at the THQ showcase. And it's got a lot of the Elder Scrolls to it. So I'm wondering if this is maybe THQ putting out two games that play a little bit too similarly. The Gothic remake and this Fate Keeper that might be a bit too similar, but also I think this is only launching into early access, so depending on how you look at early access, maybe it's not coming out at the same time. Let's skip ahead to some combat things. So it is like first person melee for the most part. I'm not actually really seeing any kind of RPG elements to it. Like talking to people and picking up quests and stealthing around places and things like that. It does look like it's a first person melee situation. Skip ahead again. So there's some pretty cool dismemberment things here. Remember, they don't like that kind of thing. Non-consensual mutilation, I believe, happening here. Like, that's pretty good. And it's probably a canned animation, but it would be nice to think that it like actually realistically reacts to where you hit the guy on his model, but no, it's probably a canned animation. Anyway, early access at some point next year, I think. Am I thinking of a different game? Potentially? Anyway, wishlist on Steam. And then last, which is unfortunately really only a teaser, but Darksiders 4. So whether we'll actually see anything from this anytime soon, I kind of doubt. If they had any gameplay at the show, they really would have shown it. A lot of this teaser is just the end of Darksiders 1, the kind of speech of heaven will like hunt you down and hell like despises you. How are you going to fight this war all by yourself? And he's like, I won't be by myself. And it's like the other horsemen show up. And it was super hype, and then we didn't get any of it in Darksiders 2 or Darksiders 3 or Darksiders Genesis. So there is like the promise of Darksiders 4, will you fucking have all four horsemen in the game, please? But yeah, we don't know anything about it. So they've all gotten their own game at this point, arguably. Strife sort of got his own game. Darksiders 1 was War, Darksiders 2 was Death, Darksiders 3 was Fury, and then Darksiders Genesis was a duo. You were playing Strife and War. All of them were prequels to Darksiders 1, so we still haven't really got the follow-up, really, to the first game. Anyway, who knows? Who knows when we'll see that? And then last for the showcases, there was a Games Forged in Germany showcase. Technically, this was last week, but I forgot to put it in, so I'm still going to do it here instead. So this is the games you make. This is kind of a like make your own game kind of thing, but it's also kind of sort of a roguelike to it. So the idea is you have a set amount of time to build a game, and at the beginning of each day, I think you are given. If I can find it now. I'm gonna wait for it to come up. Yeah, so there, you're given like a couple of things to put into the game, and then there's some elements to like add those features and move them around and make them a little bit fun or what have you. But eventually, when it comes time to like launch the game, you have to play it, and I think you have to be able to complete the game basically, and that's kind of the way it works. When you hit the deadline, being able to complete the game, just trying to remove bugs from the game, that kind of thing. How exactly it works, I don't really know, but I'm kind of intrigued by it. Anyway, that's the games you make. I don't think it had a release date. Yeah, it's just in the wishlist section for now. Friedel is changing, has a kind of a Tim Burton vibe to it. So you are Frida. Sister has gone missing. Nobody's looking for her. I'm telling you to shut up whenever you bring her up and this kind of thing. And you are basically not going to do that. You're going to go find your sister. But there is definitely an element of like Addams Family, Nightmare Before Christmas kind of vibes to it, or Beetlejuice in some ways. Like I'm getting a lot of that from the game. And this looks like kind of fun, kind of interesting. And I think there is some kind of werewolf situation going on. Anyway, 2026 for that one. Engraving is a kind of interesting one. So this is first-person horror thing. And you are, at the beginning, you are and your friends go onto this island looking for treasure. Shenanigans transpire. You're on your own now. And you're trying to map out the area and trying to figure out how to get off the island. Because every day or every night or something, the forest changes formation. So you are trying to piece that together, keeping a map effectively of the different areas, and when the day changes, you'll be able to say, okay, this thing was over here last time, and I'm gonna but today it's over here kind of thing. So it's not like random kind of thing. It's more like quadrants, sections just get shifted about the place. So you can eventually find a way out, but it's probably a case of it being day 20 something is when you can actually find a way out, assuming you survive the whole thing, of course. But it's an interesting concept, and I kind of like the idea. And I think I've said a few times that if you have an interesting gimmick, I will play your game. Alright, moving on. Last one. This wasn't in any showcases, but I thought it looked kind of interesting. So this is Shutter Story. It's got a little bit of home safety hotline to it. The idea is you're taking these pictures, and the pictures are haunted in some ways, or have some element to them that aren't immediately obvious, and you do different kind of distortions or put different effects on the photo to kind of reveal the haunting element and identify it and what have you. And at the same time, there is some ongoing mystery in your family that you're trying to unravel, and there's some kind of like psychological trauma situation going on, despite the PS2 graphics. I don't know, it looks interesting. Home Safety Hotline was interesting, and I think the kind of just idea of detecting and finding like strange things in photographs is kind of interesting. It's a little bit of what the fuck's the game? The one where you're just looking at CCTV cameras and looking for anomalies. I forget what it's called. Anyway, it has that kind of element to it, I think. Anyway, free games over on the Epic Games Store. First up is Key Locker, turn-based cyberpunk action. I played the demo of this. I thought it was really interesting, but I did find that it's also kind of hard. It is a turn-based JRPG kind of thing, but it also has a kind of rhythm element to it, and there's like a live, real-time parrying system that the game heavily relies on. for damage and in combat. So, like, it's way harder than Clair Obscure's parrying system, let's put it that way, way harder. But yeah, I like the idea of it. And Pilgrims, I'm not familiar with. Playful adventure game. Oh, it's the Machinarium Samurai, so this is still going with those games, because a lot of those games came up free on the Epic Game Store recently. Roam the land as you please, make new friends, share a laugh with your fellow travelers, help them complete their little stories your way. How many different solutions can you find? So is it a case of kind of putting cards together to make a story? Might be interesting. Anyway, it's free over in the Epic Game Store. Since we're coming to the start of a new month, PlayStation Plus monthly catalog is being refreshed. So this month it's Lies of P, DayZ, and My Hero Academia 2. So Lies of P is the Pinocchio but make it Bloodborne. Got a lot of great reviews, seems from the Souls community at least. They seem to really enjoy it. Also recently got some DLC, so that's a good way for you to get in on it if you were feeling like it. DayZ, hardcore survival game, 60 players, 163 kilometer squared map. It sounds like Rust, but zombies. No checkpoints or saves. Yeah, well, I'm not playing that. Fuck that. And then My Hero 1's Justice 2, I think is like a Dragon Ball fighting game, similar. Smash Hit 3D Arena Fighter. Yeah, okay, yeah. So it's the sequel to well, obviously it has a 2 in it. Anyway, those are some of the games you can play soon. What if you want to play something right now? Well, last week and this week you could play Donkey Kong Bonanza. I forgot to put it in because I thought Wu Chang was out next week or last week and Donkey Kong was out this week, but it was actually the other way around. Anyway, Donkey Kong Bonanza Switch 2 exclusive. From what I've seen, it's very, very good, and it is from like the Super Mario Odyssey team. Even their OK games are still very, very good. So if you have a Switch 2, chances are you've already got Donkey Kong Bonanza. Anyway, moving on, Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. So of the first Ninja Gaiden games out this year, we also have Ninja Gaiden 4 coming along soon enough. So this is kind of a throwback to the original Ninja Gaiden games. It is quite hard. You have a duo protagonists. You've got not Ryu Hayabusa, a different guy, and then another female ninja from a different clan. They have different abilities, different movesets and stuff like that. But they're both fun to play at. But yes, it's hard. It's Ninja Gaiden. Ninja Gaiden is hard. Also, so a couple of indie horror titles. So first up is Heartworm, which I've talked a little bit about before. It's kind of a Silent Hill type thing where you are I think you're searching for a family member, I'm not sure, but you go into like this psycho hellscape kind of thing. Camera is your weapon. You have to take pictures of these like static creatures. I played the demo and I did like the demo, but I also found that I didn't really know what to do to progress in the demo. So I did feel like I was walking in circles a lot. So kind of hoping that the main game is a little bit better at telling you how to progress, or not how to progress, but like pointing you in the right direction. So I did feel like I just didn't know what the fuck I was doing. Dead Take has a lot of voice actors from like Final Fantasy, Ben Starr, Neil Newborn from Baldur's Gate, and a lot of other alumni from various voice actor alumni. The deal with Dead Take is it is, as you can see, a full motion video thing, and it's kind of going into like the shitty side, we'll say, of like Hollywood and stardom and stuff like that. So it is a little bit walking sim, it's a little bit horror, and then there's random full motion video in there. Seems interesting. One-Eyed Liko is from the same developer behind Black Book, which we played on the channel ages ago. Black Book was a kind of Slavic folklore deck builder thing. And I don't really like deck builders generally, but I really like that one. I thought that was really good. And I liked Inscription, I suppose, but in general, not really a fan of deck builders. Anyway, Online Eco isn't a deck builder. It's a, as you can see, first person, I think, walking sim. I don't think there's much actual things that can kill you kind of thing, but it is obviously kind of a horror game to some ways, dipping into more Slavic folklore. I'm not super familiar with One-Eyed Liko. I'm not sure if it's unique to the game or if it's an actual folklore creature. Black Book did have things like Baba Yaga and so on in it. Anyway, that's also out. I think it's PC only for now. The last game out this week is Time Flies. Time Flies is kind of a day in the life of a fly. You have, as you can see, 76.4 seconds to do a bunch of things on your list. As you can see, you have your bucket list before you die. So you have that long to do all of that. It does remind me a lot of the game Minute, where, again, you had a minute to live, and you had to try to complete the game within a minute. Now, Minute was somewhat nicer in that it, as long as you could get to a checkpoint within the minute, you effectively restarted your minute from the checkpoint, so it wasn't quite as bad. Time Flies, I think, is you literally just have like 90 seconds or something like that to do the whole thing. So it's a case of like trial and error. You know, what's the route to get you through all of those kind of things. But I think it'll be a fun game. It's a very short game though, obviously. It's like less than a minute and a half. Anyway, unfortunately though, it is now time to talk about the worst part of video games, the video game industry. So we've already talked about the game censorship section. But that's not the only thing shitty going on. Sony files lawsuit against Tencent for allegedly cloning Horizon series. So you may recall the Light of Motoram that I think was announced. I think it was announced at the Game Awards. That sure looked like Horizon. It looked a hell of a lot like Horizon Zero Dawn. Well, Sony also seems to think that, and this article did not keep my highlights, so that sucks. Anyway, so Sony Interactive Entertainment are accusing Tencent of developing a slavish clone of its popular Horizon series. So the lawsuit was filed the end of last month in California for some reason, even though Sony is Japanese and Tencent is Chinese, but okay. Sony is claiming that Light of Motoram is a blatant and unlawful copy of the Horizon franchise. Now, it is important to keep in mind that in the video game industry, there are tons of clones of games, and people don't get litigious about this kind of thing. So Sony jumping in here is a bit silly, honestly. But anyway, Sony explained that Horizon has become one of its most valuable intellectual properties. Citation needed. Debuting in 2017, claims Tencent is attempting to benefit from that success by releasing a ripoff that misappropriates the overall tone, feel, sound, and appearance of the series. Now, I'm pretty sure you can't copyright tone and feel. Sound, you copyright the music, I guess. That's kind of it. Appearance, wasn't Horizon going for like photorealism? You can't copy photorealism, guys. Anyway, the overall impression conveyed by Tencent's adoption in Light of Motoram of the same high-fidelity post-apocalyptic visual aesthetics, that's Fallout, could be that as well, blending lush natural environments, tribal culture, futuristic mechanical elements, and sounds primarily in the soprano register. Like, you do not have fucking entitlement to sounds primarily in the soprano register. Come on. Is substantially similar to Horizon Zero Dawn and for Horizon Forbidden West. It's notable they didn't throw in the VR game there. That's how much Sony cares about their VR. Anyway, audiovisual works and infringes the copyrights therein. Unless they're fucking playing the music, I don't think you really have a copyright here. Arguably you have a patent, but even then. Maybe it's a trademark? Maybe? I don't know. Tencent is also accused, and this is kind of more of this might be a bigger issue, of specifically adopting Sony's approach to branding. Oh no, sorry, not this. This is the next thing. By using a red-haired female main character. Like, fuck off. Blood Rain. Is Blood Rain misappropriating Horizon Zero Dawn now as well? Red Sonja? The comic book series? Yeah, that was copying Horizon. Anyway, Sony believes that this reflects a deliberate infringement of the Aloy character mark, just because she has red hair. Come on. Fucking Heavenly Sword woman, whatever her name is. Nariko. Anyway. Yeah, so this is potentially, if this is true, this is kind of the bigger issue. In what is perhaps the wildest accusation, Sony claims that Tencent previously attempted to license the Horizon franchise in March of last year to create a mobile game that would expand the series by incorporating Eastern aesthetics. So they effectively wanted to make a mobile game that was Horizon Japan, Horizon China, whatever. PlayStation Maker says Tencent's pitch was rejected outright. Sony wanted nothing to do with it. They considered the matter closed. Tencent only made that approach after working on Light of Motoram and continued to secretly develop. I mean, they announced the fucking game at the Game Awards anyway. The title after failing to secure the Horizon license. So the thrust here is that Tencent started working on the game anyway, then went to Sony to see if they could license it. Were developing the game on the assumption that they would get the license, then they didn't, but they kept going with it anyway and decided not to make it Horizon anymore. So there's the kind of thrust here, is that maybe it started as a Horizon game in earnest, but there have been, in the history of video games that started as licensed content. The licensor pulled the license at the last minute, and that they had to adapt the game to not have any of those things in it. Naturally, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but it has definitely happened before. Anyway, so the lawsuit includes multiple screenshots of the pitch deck, as you can see here. For some reason, my actually refresh. Maybe I can get that back. Sometimes if I have too many here come my highlights back too. Sometimes if you have too many tabs open, it doesn't load extensions properly. Alright, still not working for the screenshots. Anyway, oh yes, and they also wanted to turn it into a games as a service game. Fun. Pitch deck allegedly include a mock-up of Aloy standing on the Great Wall of China. So again, if that's true, it would say that Light of Motoram certainly started as a Horizon game, and they've changed things to make it not so obviously, or certainly not like immediately looking at it as a Horizon game, but you know, it kind of looks like one. Anyway, Sony are asking for a preliminary and permanent injunction, $150,000 for each separate work in the Horizon franchise that has been infringed. They didn't mention the VR game, guys. If you had mentioned the VR game, you could have got an extra $150,000 out of that. Anyway, and to deliver all infringing materials to Sony's attorneys so they can destroy them. We'll see what comes of that. The lawsuit has only just been filed, and Tencent have not said anything about it. But speaking of Sony having nothing... Speaking of Sony having to say that Horizon has become one of its most valuable intellectual properties because it doesn't make any other fucking games, Xbox games are saving the PlayStation from its midlife crisis. So 2017's Horizon Zero Dawn, kind of weird here, marked the inflection point of the PlayStation 4, where it went from being a great machine for indie games and third-party blockbusters to becoming synonymous with top-notch asterisk first-party exclusives. So kind of at this point, they kind of stopped being good for indie developers. They stopped making their really small Sony games that are arguably some of their better games. Anyway, and then this is when Spider-Man God of War showed up. The avalanche continued up until the moment of the PS5's arrival, and then for a long time nothing happened. We obviously got sequels to those games, but fuck all since. PS5 is a success story not because of the first-party PlayStation Studios hit machine, but seemingly in spite of it. All we really have is Astrobot and Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2 doesn't count because it's not a first-party developed game, it's only published, and Astrobot is flagrantly against the whole art piece prestige shit that Sony have been going in on it. It was very much going back to, hey, remember when video games were, fun? Anyway. So the console defining IPs have yet to arrive for the PS5, even though it's arguably certainly at the midpoint of the generation. Like really should be here by now. Anyway, And the live service money pit Sony went all in on has accomplished little. Has it accomplished anything? While tying up some teams for years. So the reason you aren't seeing new things, basically, is the vast majority of Sony's first-party studios had been working on live service shite, which has all been scuppered. So all the work they've been working on is gone. They're effectively starting from scratch. Cool. Anyway, so momentum should be building back up to another end of the generation crescendo, which is kind of what we saw at the end of the PS4, the end of the PS3, and so on. As developers squeeze every last optimization out of the hardware, it still feels like we're waiting for the cavalry to arrive. I think we're going to be waiting for a while. Probably going to be looking at PlayStation 6 for a lot of these games. Anyway, but Xbox, who absolutely would not have expected to come to the rescue, are currently doing some very heavy lifting on the PlayStation 5. Over half of the top 10 best-selling games on the console in the last half year or so are all from Microsoft. So like Forza Horizon 5, Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, Remastered, Doom the Dark Ages, the Indiana Jones game, and then obviously Call of Duty and Minecraft are always there. So Xbox games are continuing to bolstering the PS5 lineup throughout the year because we've got the Gears of War game coming, Hellblade 2 is on the way, then the Outer Worlds 2, Ninja Gaiden 4. What's coming from Sony? Ghost of Yotai. That's kind of it. One game. Now again, you can argue Hellblade 2 is a completed game. They're just porting it. Indiana Jones was already finished. Forza Horizon 5 is an older game. Don't even remember when it came out, to be honest. So again, you could argue that Microsoft isn't making these from scratch. You know, it's porting them. But still, Sony has a lot of games they could be porting from the PS3 and they're not doing it. Anyway, Xbox has turned out to be an unexpected fortuitous pillar, which I really don't think anybody had on their bingo card, but you know, whatever, it's working. If Microsoft had kept all of its recently acquired toys exclusive, Sony would be in a pretty bad position for the PS5 right now. So it is really weird, really weird situation we're in where Xbox is saving Sony. Really. I mean, other third-party developers are obviously always also putting their games out, but Sony's first-party offerings for the PS5 since Horizon Forbidden West, maybe? I don't think we've really seen anything since then. How many times have we seen The Last of Us Part 2, though? Like 8 different versions of it? Anyway. Last thing, IWGB Game Workers Union condemns its exclusion from the UK Video Games Council. So the UK Video Games Council was formed the end of last month, possibly earlier in the month. But it's a new organization established to work in partnership with the government to support the growth, innovation, and international reach of the UK video games and interactive entertainment industry. But they don't have anybody from the union there. In fact, they don't really have anybody from the developers side, the workers side of the industry. It's all just the business end of it, all just the executive branch. So the Game Workers branch of the Independent Workers of Great Britain, which is not necessarily a video game union. It is a big umbrella union, massive umbrella union of just the workers of Great Britain. It's pretty big. Open letter to Labour MPs, Labour are the government that are currently in power, condemning its exclusion from the recently formed UK Video Games Council. They've criticised the exclusion of the union and charitable organisations from its membership despite an ongoing crisis in the sector involving mass layoffs, poor oversight, and unregulated AI outsourcing. Many things we've been talking about on the channel, still affecting the industry, and yet they didn't think it was a good idea to talk to any of those people. Anyway, Game Workers have expressed its disappointment in 13 of the council's 14 members being employed by companies with headquarters in London and the south of England, so it's very not reflective of the rest of the country. It is very much where all the money is. Describing the composition as clearly unrepresentative of game workers across the country. Unrepresentative was the word I was trying to think of. Anyway, notably, no trade unions, no worker representatives, and no grassroots initiatives have been included in the body's composition. Instead, it's all CEOs. It was here somewhere. So the CEO of Rebellion Games, the chair of Outright Games, UKIE's CEO, Junior. What? I don't know what that is. Jekko? Oh no, that's the name of the company. Co-founder, all right, founder, and then another CEO. Inaugural members of the council. Good shit. Anyway. Additionally, this exclusion contradicts the government's own pledges. The fair pay agreements in social care involved union consultation, and the Prime Minister has repeatedly emphasised the need for partnership with workers to rebuild industries, and yet none of the workers are even a member of this thing. So it criticises the inclusion of representatives who are working with groups that are actively investing in automated software and AI applications, which they say is not empowering workers, it's empowering the executive side of things. Anyway, in reality, such empowerment and optimization risks replacing genuine creativity with the mediocrity of algorithms, while compounding an ongoing crisis related to technological displacement and poor regulation, a trend that has already led to thousands of game workers losing their jobs. We've talked about all of the layoffs that have happened in the last 2 years. It's our belief that one of the biggest problems facing our industry today is the rate at which people leave it. In order to fix that problem, you have to be willing to listen to the voice of the workers, a voice that is not yet represented on the council. It's our firm view that we could be that voice. Them and, a lot of other groups should really be on that, and maybe fewer CEOs. Just a thought. Anyway, we'll leave him to loop. Anyway, that's your news for the 28th of July to the 3rd of August 2025. Still seeing some of the backlash from the Steam and itch.io censorship, takedown, not safe for work thing, whatever you want to call it. Mastercard certainly getting or feeling the pressure from the gamers. We'll see if anything comes of it. I mean, hopefully it does, because this is the beginning, or not even the beginning. It's a continuation of a crackdown on free expression, sexual expression, any of that kind of thing, and really will just lead more into, hey, we got away with that, so let's, stop same-sex marriages, let's stop LGBT things, let's stop mental health things, let's stop women's health things, and so on and so forth, until we get all the way back to the Dark Ages. Anyway, hopefully something will come from it. What is somewhat disappointing, and kind of leading off the last story there with the games union, or the workers union not having representation on the UK's new video game board, or video game initiative. The UK, as I've talked about, have put out the Online Safety Act, or have implemented it, which is effectively giving a third party, not the UK government, your government ID so you can access adult content. And obviously adult content is porn, sure, but it's also all of the other things I've been talking about, which is mental health help, LGBT help, any of those kind of things that are considered adult, even though I'm pretty sure minors do those too. Anyway, there was a a petition sent into the government that had 500,000 names to it or something like that, and it was just dismissed. Wasn't even any debate put on it. So it's not a great position, and it's not a great thing to feel, where they have done like no consultation on their Online Safety Act, and MasterCard and Visa doing no consultation on this not safe for work purge of PC games or games in general. It's just really frustrating that it's so easy, or seemingly so easy, to put these things in place and so difficult to take them back. I think the Online Safety Act will probably be repealed because it is massively unpopular in the UK. Like super de-duper unpopular. I don't really see the MasterCard and Visa situation changing. I do hope it does, but they have such a long history of being anti-sex in general that I feel this is a significant uphill battle. Anyway, elsewhere, obviously we had a bunch of showcases. The 2 Square Enix games kind of seem interesting, but not a huge amount came out of the Nintendo Direct. The THQ showcase, what was it, Fate Keeper, something like that, kind of looked nice. And the Darksiders 4 tease is obviously great, but it's a tease and there was no gameplay, so who knows how long away that is, if it's even in development or if they're only like starting it right now. Who knows? Something to juice the investors and push up the THQ stock number, but I don't think we're gonna be getting that game anytime soon. Games made in Germany, there were way more. Way more. I only picked out a couple that were new-ish to me. Or at least that I hadn't seen trailers for before. But there were a lot of other things shown off there. Nivalis had a decent trailer that showed off a little bit more of its day-to-day, or not day-to-day, but beat-to-beat gameplay. And that, what was it called? PVVK? The one where you're inside a big, like, gun battery kind of thing. That also had a bit more to show off. That was kind of interesting. And then Sony suing Tencent. Like, that lawsuit has only just come through, and I think a lot of it will be contingent on whether they can prove that the game still has a significant enough amount of Horizon stuff still in there from when Tencent wanted to make a Horizon game in the first place. So if they can prove that, they might actually have something in their lawsuit. But if they're just going to say, hey, kind of looks like Horizon, it's like, how many games copied GTA? How many games copied The Elder Scrolls? How many games copied Assassin's Creed? Like, so many fucking games are just clones of other games. It is kind of funny that Sony come out doing this because, hey, you could just make another game. You couldn't be so heavily reliant on Horizon. And The Last of Us, God of War, kind of it. Whereas you guys used to have a lot more to that. Just look at Astrobot. Look at all the cameos. You guys used to have a lot more. Now I know, like, vast majority of those are third-party developers, but a lot of them are Sony first-party IPs, and they just do fuck all with them. Could have been making them instead of a bunch of shitty live service things. Anyway, that's it from me. As you can see, we're still really getting set up here. I'm hoping to have some actual video games on the channel soon. I don't know if we'll be doing streaming necessarily, but that's still something I'm trying to work out. Anyway, I'm gonna head off. Have a good rest of your day, and hopefully talk to you guys soon. Bye.